The inevitable is imminent. The Hour of Saturn. July 22nd, 2019. Era Voga, 6:50 a.m. Dies Lunae. Anno V Sol 29 degrees. Cancer. Luna 2 degrees Aries. VV. The Divine Iamblichus on the Mysteries. Et al. The answer of the preceptor Amun to the epistle of Porphyry to a Nebel, and a solution of the doubts contained in it. Section 1, Chapter 1. Hermes, the god who presides over language, was formerly very properly considered as common to all priests. And the power who presides over the true science concerning the gods is one and the same in the whole of things. Hence our ancestors dedicated the inventions of their wisdom to this deity, inscribing all their own writings with the name of Hermes. If, therefore, we participate of a portion of this god, adapted and commensurate to our powers, you do well to propose your theological doubts to the priests as friends, and to make these doubts known to them. I am very properly conceiving that the epistle sent to my disciple Nebel was written to me, shall give you a true answer to your inquiries. For it would not be becoming that Pythagoras and Plato, Democritus and Eudoxus, and many other of the ancient Greeks should have obtained appropriate instruction from the sacred scribes of their time, but that you, who are our contemporary, and think conformably to those ancients, should be frustrated of your wish by those who are now living, and who are called common preceptors. I, therefore, thus betake myself to the present discussion, and do you, if you please, conceive that the same person to whom you sent the letter returns you an answer. Or, if it should seem fit to you, admit it to be me who discourses with you in writing, or some other prophet of the Egyptians, for this is of no consequence. Or, which I think is still better, dismiss the consideration whether the speaker is an inferior or a superior character, but direct your attention to what is said, so as readily to excite your mind to survey whether what is asserted is true or false. In the first place, therefore, we shall divide the genera of the proposed problems in order that we may know the quantity and quality of them. And in the next place, we shall show from what theologies the doubts are assumed, and according to what sciences they are investigated. For some things that are badly confused require a certain distinction. Others are conversant with the cause through which they subsist and are apprehended. Others, which we propose according to a certain contrariety, draw our decision on both sides, and some things require for us the whole development of mystic doctrines. Such, therefore, being the nature of the subjects of discussion, they are assumed from many places and from different sciences. For some things introduce animadversions from what the wise men of the Chaldeans have delivered. Others produce objections from what the prophets of the Egyptians teach. And there are some that, adhering to the theory of philosophers, make inquiries conformably to them. There are now likewise some that from other opinions, which do not deserve to be mentioned, elicit a certain debitation. And others originate from the common conceptions of mankind. These things, therefore, are of themselves variously disposed, and are multiformly connected with each other. Hence, through all these causes, a certain discussion is requisite for the management of them in a becoming manner. Chapter 2. We shall therefore deliver to you the peculiar dogmas of the Assyrians, and also clearly develop to your own opinions, and also clearly develop to you our own opinions, collecting some things from the infinite writings of the ancients, but others from those particulars which were comprehended by the ancients in one treatise, and pertain to the whole knowledge of divine natures. If also you should propose any philosophic inquiry, we shall discuss it for you, according to the ancient pillars of Hermes, which Plato, Aflatun, and Pythagoras knew before, and from thence constituted their philosophy. But such things as exhibit foreign inquiries, or which are contradictory and contentious, we shall assist mildly and aptly, or we shall demonstrate their absurdity. Such likewise as proceed conformably to common conceptions, we shall endeavor to discuss in a way perfectly known and clear. And things indeed which require the experience of divine operations to an accurate knowledge of them, we shall explain, as far as this is possible to be effected by words alone. But such as are full of intellectual theory, we shall develop with a view to the purification of the soul. But indications of this theory worthy of notice may be mentioned, by which it is possible for you, and those who resemble you, to be conducted by intellect to the essence of real beings. And with respect to such things as become known by a reasoning process, we shall leave no one of these without a perfect demonstration. But in all things we shall give to each that which is appropriate, and such questions, indeed, as are theological, we shall answer theologically. Such as are theurgically, but such as are philosophical, we shall, in conjunction with you, philosophically explore. Of these also, such as extend to first causes, we shall unfold into light by following them conformably to first principles. But such as pertain to morals or to ends, we shall fitly discuss according to the ethical mode. And in a similar manner, we shall examine other things methodically and appropriately. Let us, therefore, now betake ourselves to your inquiries. Chapter 3. In the first place, therefore, you say, it must be granted that there are gods. It must be granted that there are gods. It must be granted that there are gods. Thus to speak, however, is not right on this subject, for an innate knowledge of the gods is coexistent with our very essence. And this knowledge is superior to all judgment and deliberate choice, and subsists prior to reason and demonstration. It is also coined from the beginning with its proper cause, and is consubsistent with the essential tendency of the soul to the good. If indeed it be requisite to speak the truth, the contact with divinity is not knowledge. For knowledge is in a certain respect separated from its object by otherness. But prior to the knowledge, which as one thing knows another, is the uniform connection with divinity, and which is suspended from the gods, is spontaneous and inseparable from them. Hence, it is not proper to grant this, as it might not be granted, nor to admit it as ambiguous, for it is always uniquely established in energy. Nor are we worthy thus to explore it, as if we had sufficient authority to approve or reject it, for we are comprehended in it, or rather we are filled by it, and we possess that very thing which we are, or by which our essence is characterized in knowing the gods. I shall likewise say the same thing to you concerning the more excellent genera that follow the gods. I mean Daemons, heroes, and undefiled souls. For it is necessary to understand respecting these, that there is always in them one definite reason of essence, and to remove from them the indefiniteness and instability of the human condition. It is likewise requisite to separate from them that inclination to one side of an argument rather than another, arising from the equilibrium of a reasoning process. For a thing of this kind is foreign from the principles of reason and life, and rather tends to secondary natures, and to such things as pertain to the power and contrariety of generation. But it is necessary that the more excellent genera should be apprehended uniformly. The co-nascent perception, therefore, of the perpetual attendance of the gods will be assimilated to them. Hence, as they have an existence which is always invariably the same, thus also the human soul is conjoined to them by knowledge, according to a sameness of subsistence, by no means pursuing through conjecture, or opinion, or a syllogistic process, all which originate in time, an essence which is above all these, but through the pure and blameless intellections which the soul received from eternity from the gods, becoming united to them. You, however, seem to think that there is the same knowledge of divine natures as of anything else, and that one thing, rather than another, may be granted from opposites, in the same manner as it is usual to do in dialectic discussions. There is, however, no similitude whatever between the two kinds of knowledge. For the knowledge of divine nature is different from that of other things, and is separated from all opposition. It likewise neither subsists in being now granted, or in becoming to be, but was from eternity uniformly consubsistent with the soul. And thus much I say to you concerning the first principle in us, from which it is necessary those should begin who speak or hear anything about the natures that are superior to us. Chapter 4. With respect to your inquiry, what the peculiarities are in each of the more excellent genera by which they are separated from each other, what the peculiarities are in each of the more excellent genera by which they are separated from each other, what the peculiarities are in each of the more excellent genera by which they are separated from each other. If you understand by peculiarities the specific differences under the same genus, which are distinguished by opposite qualities, as the rational and irrational under animal, we by no means admit peculiarities of this kind in things which neither have one common essence, nor an equal contradistinction, nor receive a composition from something common, which is indefinite and defines the peculiarity. But if you apprehend the peculiarity to be, as in primary and secondary natures, differing in their whole essence and whole genus, a certain simple condition of being, definite in itself, in this case, your conception of peculiarities will be reasonable. For these peculiarities of things, which have an eternal subsistence, are simple and entirely exempt. The inquiry, however, proceeds imperfectly, for it was necessary, in the first place, to inquire what the peculiarities are of the most excellent genera, according to essence. In the next place, what they are according to power. and thus afterwards what they are according to energy. But as your question now stands, with respect to the peculiarities by which these genera are separated, you alone speak of the peculiarities of energies. Hence you inquire concerning the difference in the last things pertaining to them. But you leave uninvestigated such things as are first and most honorable in them, and which are the elements of their difference. In the same place also something is added concerning efficacious and passive motions, which is a division by no means adapted to the difference of the more excellent genera. For the contrariety of action and passion is not inherent in any one of them, but their energies are unrestrained, immutable, and without habitude to their opposites. Hence, neither must we admit in them motions of such a kind as arise from action and passion. For neither do we admit in the soul a self-motion, which consists of the mover and that which is moved. But we conceive that it is a certain simple essential motion, subsisting from itself, and not possessing a habitude to another thing, and exempt from acting on and suffering from itself. Who, therefore, can endure that the peculiarities of the genera, superior to the soul, should be distinguished according to active or passive motions? That also which is added by you, or of accidents, or of accidents, or of accidents, is foreign from these genera. For in composites and things which exist together with, or in others, or are comprehended by others, some things are conceived to be preceding us, but others consequent, and some as essences, but others as afterwards acceding to essences. For there is a certain co-arrangement of them. An incongruity and interval intervenes, but in the more excellent genera, all things must be conceived in essence, in merely existing. And wholes have a precedenous subsistence, are separated by themselves, and have not their hypostasis form, or in others, so that there is not anything in them which is accidental. Hence, the peculiarity of them is not characterized from accidents. At the end, likewise, of your inquiry, you introduce a distinction according to nature. For your question asks how essences are known by energies, by physical motions, and by accidents. How essences are known by energies, by physical motions, and by accidents. How essences are known by energies, by physical motions, and by accidents. The very contrary, however, to all this takes place. For if energies and motions were constitutive of essences, they would be the lords of the difference which is between them. But if essences generate energies, the former being separate prior to the latter, will impart to motions, energies, and accidents that by which they differ from each other. This therefore subsists contrarily to what you suppose, for the purpose of discovering the peculiarity which you now investigate. In short, whether you think that there is one genus of the gods, one of daemons, and in a similar manner of heroes and souls essentially incorporeal, or whether you admit that these are severally many, you inquire what the difference of them is according to peculiarities. For if you apprehend that each of these is one and the same genus, the whole arrangement of scientific theology is confounded. But if, as truth requires, you admit that they are generically distinguished, and that there is not in them one common essential definition, but that those of them which are prior are exempt from those that are inferior, it is not possible to discover their common boundaries. And if this were possible, this very thing would be, and if this were possible, this very thing would destroy their peculiarities. In this way, therefore, the object of investigation cannot be found. He, however, he who directs his attention to the analogous sameness which exists in superior natures, as, for instance, in the many genera of the gods, and again in daemons and heroes, and in the last place in souls, will be able to define their peculiarities. Hence, through this, it is demonstrated by us what the rectitude is of the present inquiry, and what its accurate distinction, and also in what manner it is impossible, and in what manner it is possible for it to subsist. Chapter 5. In the next place, let us direct our attention to the solution of your inquiries. There is, therefore, the good itself, which is beyond essence, and there is that good which subsists according to essence. I mean the essence which is most ancient and most honorable, and by itself incorporeal. And this is the illustrious peculiarity of the gods, which exist in all the genera that subsist about them, preserving their appropriate distribution and order, and not being divulged from it, and at the same time being inherent with invariable sameness in all the gods, and their perpetual attendants. In souls, however, which rule over bodies, and precedenteously pay attention to them, and which, prior to generation, have by themselves a perpetual arrangement, essential good is not present, nor the cause of good, which is prior to essence. But to these a certain participation and habit proceeding from essential good accedes, just as we see that the participation of beauty and virtue is very different in these souls from that which we behold in men. For the latter is ambiguous, and accedes to composite natures as something adventitious. But the former has an immutable and never-failing establishment in souls, and neither itself ever departs from itself, nor can be taken away by anything else. Such, therefore, being the beginning and end in the divine genera, conceived to media between these extreme boundaries, viz. The order of heroes, which has an arrangement more elevated than that of souls, in power and virtue, in beauty and magnitude, and in all the goods which subsist about souls, in which, though it entirely transcends the psychical order, yet at the same time is proximately conjoined to it through the alliance of a similar formed life. But the other medium, which is suspended from the gods, though it is far inferior to them, is that of Daemons, which is not of a primarily operative nature, but is subservient to it, and follows the beneficent will of the gods. It likewise unfolds into energy the invisible good of the gods, being itself assimilated to it, and gives completion to its fabrications conformably to it. For it renders that which is ineffable in the good of the gods effable, illuminates that which is formless in forms, and produces into visible reasons, or productive forms, that which is divine good is above all reason, receiving also a co-nascent participation of things beautiful. It imparts and transfers it an unenvying abundance to the genera posterior to itself, receiving also a co-nascent participation of things beautiful. It imparts and transfers it in unenvying abundance to the genera posterior to itself, receiving also a co-nascent participation of things beautiful. It imparts and transfers it in unenvying abundance to the genera posterior to itself. These middle genera, therefore, give completion to the common bond of the gods and souls, and cause the connection of them to be indissoluble. They also bind together the one continuity of things from on high as far as to the end. Make the communion of wholes to be inseparable. Cause all things to have the best, and a commensurate mixture, in a certain respect, equally transmit the progression from more excellent to inferior natures, and the elevation from things posterior to such as are prior. Insert in more imperfect beings order and measures of the communication which descends from more excellent natures, and of that by which it is received, and make all things to be familiar and co-adapted to all. Supernally receiving the causes of all these from the gods. You must not therefore think that this division is the peculiarity of powers or energies or of essence, nor assuming it separately must you survey it in one of these, but by extending it in common through all the genera, you will give perfection to the answer concerning the peculiarities of gods, daemons, and heroes, and also of those and souls which are now the subject of your inquiry. Again, however, according to another mode of considering the subject, it is necessary to ascribe to the gods the whole of that which is united, whatever kind it may be, that which is firmly established in itself, and which is the cause of impartible essences, the immovable, which also is to be considered as the cause of all motion, and which transcends the whole of things, and has nothing in common with them, and the unmingled and the separate understood in common in essence, power, and energy, and everything else of this kind. But that which is now separated into multitude, and is able to impart itself to other things, and which receives from others bound in itself, and is sufficient in the distribution of partible natures, so as to give completion to them, which also participates of the primarily operative and vivific, having communion with all real and generated beings, receives a commixture from all things, imparts a contemperation to all things from itself, and extends these peculiarities through all the powers, essences, and energies in itself. All this we shall truly ascribe to souls by asserting that it is naturally implanted in them.
In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, by the aligners aligning, and the drivers driving, and the reciters of the reminder. Your God is indeed one, Lord of the heavens and the earth, and everything between them, and Lord of the Easts. We have adorned the lower heaven with the beauty of the planets, and guarded it against every defiant devil. They cannot eavesdrop on the supernal elite, for they get bombarded from every side. Rebelled, they will have a lingering torment. Except for him who snatches a fragment, he gets pursued by a piercing projectile. Inquire of them, are they more difficult to create, or the others we created? We created them from sticky clay. But you wonder, and they ridicule. And when reminded, they pay no attention. And when they see a sign, they ridicule. And they say, this is nothing but plain magic. When we have died and become dust and bones, shall we be resurrected? And our ancestors of old? Say, yes indeed, and you will be totally subdued. It will be a single nudge, and they will be staring. They will say, woe to us. This is the day of judgment. This is the day of separation which you used to deny. Gather those who did wrong, and their mates, and what they used to worship, besides God, and lead them to the way to hell, and stop them. They are to be questioned. What is the matter with you? Why do you not help one another? In fact, on that day, they will be submissive. They will come to one another, questioning one another. They will say, you used to come at us from the right. They will say, you yourselves were not believers. We had no authority over you. You yourselves were rebellious people. The word of our Lord has been realized against us. We are tasting it. We seduced you. We were seducers. On that day, they will share in the punishment. Thus we deal with the sinners. When it was said to them, there is no God except God, they grew arrogant, and said, are we to abandon our gods for a mad poet? In fact, he came with the truth, and he confirmed the messengers. Most assuredly, you will taste the painful punishment. And you will be repaid only for what you used to do, except for God's sincere servants. For them is a known provision, fruits, and they will be honored in the gardens of bliss, on furnishings, facing one another. They will be offered a cup of pure drink, white, a delight to those who drink, never polluted, and never intoxicating. With them will be bashful women with lovely eyes, as if they were closely guarded pearls. Then they will approach one another, questioning. One of them will say, I used to have a friend, who used to say, are you of those who believe that after we die and become dust and bones, we will be called to account? He will say, will you have a look? he will look, and will see him in the pit of hell. He will say, "By God, you almost ruined me. Were it not for the grace of my Lord, I would have been among the arraigned." We will not die, except for our first death, and we will not be punished. This is the supreme triumph. For the like of this let the workers work. Is this a better hospitality, or the tree of bitterness? We made it an ordeal for the unjust. It is a tree that grows from the bottom of hell. Its fruits are like the devil's heads. They will eat from it, and fill their bellies with it. Then, on top of it, they will have a brew of boiling liquid. Then their return will be to the blaze. They had found their parents astray, and rushed along in their footsteps. And most of the ancients before them went astray, even though we sent messengers to warn them. So observe the end of those who were warned, except for the sincere servants of God. And Noah called out to us, and we are the best of responders. And we saved him and his family from the great calamity. And we made his descendants the survivors. And we left mention of him among those who succeeded. Peace be upon Noah among all people. We thus reward the righteous. He was one of our believing servants. Then we drowned the others. Of his kind was Abraham, when he came to his Lord with a sound heart. He said to his father and his people, "What are you worshipping? Is it falsified gods, instead of God, that you want? So what is your opinion about the Lord of the worlds?" Then he took a glance at the stars, and said, "I am sick." But they turned their backs on him, and went away. Then he turned to their gods, and said, "Will you not eat? What is it with you, that you do not speak?" Then he turned on them, striking with his right hand. And they came running towards him. He said, "Do you worship what you carve, when God created you, and what you manufacture?" They said, "Build a pyre for him, and throw him into the furnace." They wished him ill, but we made them the losers. He said, "I am going towards my Lord, and he will guide me. My Lord, give me one of the righteous." So we gave him good news of a clement boy. Then, when he was old enough to accompany him, he said, "O my son, I see in a dream that I am sacrificing you. See what you think." He said, "O my father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, God willing, one of the steadfast." Then, when they had submitted, and he put his forehead down, we called out to him, "O Abraham, you have fulfilled the vision. Thus we reward the doers of good." This was certainly an evident test. And we redeemed him with a great sacrifice. And we left with him for later generations. Peace be upon Abraham. Thus we reward the doers of good. He was one of our believing servants. And we gave him good news of Isaac, a prophet, one of the righteous. And we blessed him, and Isaac. But among their descendants are some who are righteous, and some who are clearly unjust to themselves. And we blessed Moses and Aaron. And we delivered them and their people from the terrible disaster. And we supported them, and so they were the victors. And we gave them the clarifying scripture. And we guided them upon the straight path. And we left with them for later generations. Peace be upon Moses and Aaron. Thus we reward the righteous. They were of our believing servants. Also Elijah was one of the messengers. He said to his people, "Do you not fear? Do you call on Baal, and forsake the best of creators? God is your Lord, and the Lord of your ancestors. But they called him a liar, and thus they will be brought forward, except for God's sincere servants. And we left with him for later generations. Peace be upon the house of Elijah. Thus we reward the virtuous. He was one of our believing servants, and Lot was one of the messengers. We saved him and his family, all of them, except for an old woman who lagged behind. Then we annihilated the others. You pass by them in the morning and at night. Do you not understand? And Jonah was one of the messengers. When he fled to the laden boat, he gambled and lost. Then the fish swallowed him, and he was to blame. Had he not been one of those who praised, he would have stayed in its belly until the day they are raised. Then we threw him into the wilderness, and he was sick. And we made a gourd tree grow over him. Then we sent him to 100,000 or more. And they believed, so we gave them enjoyment for a while. Ask them, are the daughters for your Lord, while for them the sons? Or did we create the angels females, as they witnessed? No, indeed. It is one of their lies when they say, God has begotten. They are indeed lying. So he preferred girls over boys? What is the matter with you? How do you judge? Will you not reflect? Or do you have some clear proof? Then bring your book, if you are telling the truth. And they invented a relationship between him and the jinn. But the jinn know that they will be arraigned. God be glorified, far above what they allege, except for God's sincere servants. Surely, you and what you serve cannot seduce away from him, except for he who will be roasting in hell. There is not one of us but has an assigned position, and we are the arrangers, and we are the glorifiers. Even though they used to say, had we received advice from the ancients, we would have been God's faithful servants. But they rejected it, so they will find out. Our word has already gone out to our servant messengers. It is they who will be supported, and our troops will be the victors. So disregard them for a while, and watch them. They will soon see. Are they seeking to hasten our punishment? When it descends into their yard, miserable will be the mourning of those forewarned. So avoid them for a while, and watch. They will soon see. Exalted be your Lord, the Lord of glory, beyond their allegations.
Divine Iamblichus,
and peace be upon the messengers. And praise be to God,
on the
Lord
mysteries.
of the worlds.
Chapter 6. What, therefore, shall we say concerning the media? I think indeed that from what has been before said, they will be manifest to everyone. For these give completion to the indivisible connection of the extremes. Nevertheless, it is necessary to be more explicit. I consider, therefore, the demoniacal tribe to be multiplied, but unitedly, to be commingled, but in an unmingled manner, and to comprehend all other things of a subordinate nature, according to the idea of that which is more excellent. But again, the tribe of heroes supernally presides over a more obvious division and multitude, and likewise over motion, commixture, and things allied to these. It also receives gifts of a more excellent nature, concealed as it were inwardly. I mean union, purity, a firm establishment, impartible sameness, and a transcendency over and above other things. For one of these middle genera is proximate to the first, but the other to the last of the extremes. But it reasonably follows, according to continuity of alliance, that the medium which begins from the most excellent natures should proceed to such and less excellent, should proceed to such as are less excellent. But it reasonably follows, according to continuity of alliance, that the medium which begins from the most excellent natures should proceed to such as are less excellent, but that the medium which primarily produces a contact with the last of things should also, in a certain respect, communicate with the natures that transcend it. From these media, also, the completion may be seen of the first and last genera, and this entirely connascent in a similar manner in existence, in power, and in energy. As we have, therefore, in these two ways, perfectly completed the division of the four genera, we shall deem it sufficient in the others to exhibit the extreme peculiarities alone, for the sake of conciseness, and because what remains, in essence, the comprehension of the media, is in a certain respect evident. But the media themselves, as being known for the extremes, we shall omit, making a definition of the extremes in the shortest way as follows. Chapter 7. Of the extremes, therefore, one is supreme, transcendent and perfect, but the other is last in dignity, deficient and more imperfect, and the former indeed is incapable, and the former indeed is capable of accomplishing all things at once, uniformly in an instant, but the latter is neither able to effect all things, nor at once, nor suddenly, nor impartibly. The former also generates and governs all things, without being inclined toward them, but the latter is naturally disposed to verge, and be converted to the things which it generates and governs. And the former, indeed, as primordial and cause, precedes all things in power, but the latter, being suspended from the will of the gods, as from a cause, is from eternity consubsistent with it. The former likewise, according to one vigorous acme, comprehends the ends of all energies and essences, but the latter passes from some things to others, and proceeds from the imperfect to the perfect. Further still, to the former that which is highest and that which is incomprehensible pertain, and also that which is better than all measure, and is in such a manner formless as not to be circumscribed by any form. But the latter is vanquished by inclination, habitude, and propensity, and is destined by appetite directed to that which is less excellent, and by familiarity with secondary natures. Hence, in the last place, it is formalized by all various measures derived from them. Intellect, therefore, which is the leader and king of all beings, and which is the demiurgic art of the universe, is always present with the gods with invariable sameness, perfectly and without indigence, being purely established in itself, according to one energy. But soul participates of a partible and multiform intellect, having its attention directed to the government of the whole. It also providentially attends to inanimate natures, becoming at different times ingenerated in different forms. From the same causes, therefore, order and beauty itself are consubsistent with more excellent genera. Or, if some one had rather admitted, the cause of these is consubsistent with them, but with soul, the participation of intellectual order and divine beauty is always present. And with the former, indeed, the measure of wholes, or the cause of this, perpetually concurs. But soul is terminated by the divine boundary, and participates of this in a partible manner. To the former also empire over all things. To the former also empire over all beings, through the power and to the former also empire over all beings, through the power and domination of cause, may be reasonably ascribed. But soul has certain distinct boundaries, as far as to which it is able to have dominion. Such, therefore, being the different peculiarities in the extremes, it will not be difficult to understand what we have now said, and to perceive the middle peculiarities of demons and heroes, which are allied to each of the extremes, possessing a similitude to each, departing from both to the medium, and embracing a concordant communion commingled from them, and connected with it in appropriate measures. Such, therefore, must be conceived to the peculiarities of the first divine genera. Chapter 8. But neither must we admit that cause of the distinction of these genera which you subjoin, viz., that it is an arrangement with reference to the different bodies, as for instance of gods to ethereal bodies, but of daemons to aerial bodies, and of souls to such as are terran. That it is an arrangement with reference to different bodies, as, for instance, of gods to ethereal bodies, but of daemons to aerial bodies, and of souls to such as terran. That it is an arrangement with reference to different bodies, as, for instance, of gods to ethereal bodies, but of daemons to aerial bodies, and of souls to such as are terran. For such an arrangement as this, which resembles that of Socrates to a tribe when he is a senator, is unworthy of the divine genera, because all of them are essentially unrestrained and free. To which may be added that it is dreadfully absurd to ascribe to bodies a principal power of giving a specific distinction to the first causes of themselves. For bodies are in servile subjection. For bodies are in servile subjection to these causes, and are ministrant to generation. And further still, the genera of the more excellent natures are not in bodies, but the former externally rule over the latter. Hence, they are not changed in conjunction with bodies. Again, they impart for themselves to bodies every such good as they are able to receive, but they themselves receive nothing from bodies. So that neither will they derive from them certain peculiarities. For if they were as the habits of bodies, or as material forms, or were in some other way corporal formed, it would perhaps be possible for them to be changed together with the differences of bodies. But if they are separate from bodies and essentially pre-exist unmingled with them, what reasonable distinction produced from bodies can be transferred to them? To which also may be added that this assertion of yours makes bodies to be more excellent than the divine genera, since the former afford a seat to superior causes and assert in them peculiarities essentially. He, therefore, who co-arranges allotments, distributions, and consociations of governors with the governed will evidently assign a principal authority to more excellent natures. For because the presiding powers are such as we have shown them to be, on this account they have such an allotment, and give to it an essential specific distinction, but they are not assimilated to the nature of their receptacles. It is necessary, therefore, to admit a thing of this kind in partial souls, for such as is the life which the soul received prior to its insertion in a human body, and such as the form which is readily exerted. Such also is the organical body which it has suspended from itself, and as such the consequent corresponding nature which receives the more perfect life of the soul. But with respect to more excellent natures, and which as wholes comprehend the principle of parts in these, inferior are produced in superior natures, bodies in incorporeal essences, bodies in incorporeal essences, bodies in incorporeal essences, things fabricated in the fabricators, and being circularly comprehended and are directed and governed by them. Hence, the circulation of the celestial bodies being primarily inserted in the celestial circulations of the ethereal soul, are perpetually inherent in them, and the souls of the worlds, in essence of the spheres, being extended to their intellect, are perfectly comprehended by it, and are primarily generated in it. Intellect also, both that which is partial and that which is universal, is in a similar manner comprehended in the genera that are more excellent than intellect. Since, therefore, second are always converted to first natures, and superior are the leaders of inferior essences, as being the paradigms of them. Hence, essence and form accede to subordinate form. Hence, essence and form accede to subordinate from superior natures, and things posterior are primarily produced in such as are more excellent, so that order and measure are derived from primary to secondary beings, and the latter possess that which they are from the former. But the contrary must not be admitted, vis-a-vis that peculiarities emanate from things less excellent to the natures which precede them. Hence, through these things, such a corporal formed division as you introduce is demonstrated to be false. It is indeed essentially necessary not to propose anything of this kind. But if this should appear to you to be requisite, yet you must not think that what is false deserves to be discussed. For such a discussion does not exhibit a copiousness of arguments. But he wearies himself in vain, who, proposing things that are false, endeavors afterwards to subvert them as things that are not true. For how is it possible that an essence which is of itself incorporeal and which has nothing in common with the bodies that participate of it, should be distinguished from other things by corporal qualities? How can that which is not locally present with bodies be separated from corporal places? And how can that which is not enclosed by the partible circumscriptions of subjects be partibly detained by the parts of the world? And how can that which is not enclosed by the partible circumscriptions of subjects be partibly detained by parts of the world? What also is that which can prevent the gods from being everywhere? And what can restrain their power from extending as far as to the celestial arch? For to effect this must be the work of a more powerful cause, which is able to enclose and circumscribe them in certain parts, but truly exhibiting being, and which is essentially incorporeal, is everywhere, wherever it may wish to be, and that which is divine, and which transcends all things, would, if what you say were admitted, be transcended by the perfection of the whole world, and as a certain part would be comprehended by it. Hence, it would be inferior to corporal magnitude. I do not, however, see after what manner these sensible natures could be produced and specifically distinguished if there was no divine fabrication, and if no participation of divine forms extended through the whole world. In short, this opinion wholly subverts sacred institutions and the theurgic communion of the gods with men, since it exterminates from the earth the presence of the most excellent genera. For it says nothing else than that divine dwell remote from earthly natures, and that this our place of abode is deserted by them. According to this assertion, therefore, neither can we, they are priests, learn anything from the gods, nor do you rightly inquire of us as knowing more than others, since we shall differ in no respect from other men. No one, however, of these assertions is sane, for neither are the gods detained in certain parts of the world, nor are terran natures destitute of their providential attention. But the divinities are characterized by this, that they are not comprehended by anything, and that they comprehend all things in themselves. But terrestrial natures possess their existence in the pleromas of the gods. And when they become adapted to divine participation, then prior to their own proper essence, they immediately possess the gods, which latently pre-existed in it. Through these things, therefore, we have shown that the whole of this division is false, that the method employed by you of investigating peculiarities is irrational, and that to suppose the government of the gods is fixed in a certain place is by no means to apprehend the whole essence and power which is in them. It would have been proper, therefore, to have omitted the opposite inquiry made by you about this distribution of more excellent natures, as not contradicting in any respect true conceptions. Because, however, it is necessary rather to direct the attention to true science, but not to dispute with men on this account. We also shall adapt the present inquiry to a certain rationale and theological apprehension. Chapter 9. By Nuit. I consider you, therefore, as asking, for it is your inquiry, why, since the gods dwell in the heavens alone, there are invocations by theurgists of terrestrial and subterranean gods. Why, since the gods dwell in the heavens alone, there are invocations by theurgists of terrestrial and subterranean gods. Why, since the gods dwell in the heavens alone, there are invocations by theurgists of terrestrial and subterranean gods. For what you assert in the beginning is not true, that the gods circumvolve in the heavens alone. Since all things are full of them, you also inquire how some of the gods are said to be aerial, and different gods are allotted different places, and circumscribed portions of bodies, though they possess infinite, impartible, and incomprehensible power, and how likewise these will be a union of them, and how likewise there will be a union of them with each other, as they are separated by divisible circumscriptions of parts, and by differences of places and subject bodies. How some of the gods are said to be aerial, and different gods are allotted different places, and circumscribed portions of bodies though they possess infinite, impartible, and incomprehensible powers. And how likewise there will be a union of them with each other, as they are separated by divisible circumscriptions of parts, and by differences of places and subject bodies. How some of the gods are said to be aerial, and different gods are allotted different places, and circumscribed portions of bodies, though they possess infinite, impartible, and incomprehensible power. And how, likewise, there will be a union of them with each other, as they are separated by divisible circumscriptions of parts, and by difference of places and subject bodies. Of all these, therefore, and an infinite number of other similar questions, one and the best solution will be obtained by surveying the mode of divine allotment. A divine nature, therefore, whether it is allotted certain parts of the universe, such as heaven or earth, or sacred cities and regions, or certain groves, or certain statues, externally illuminates all these, in the same manner as the sun externally irradiates all things with his rays. Hence, as light comprehends the things which are illuminated by it, thus also the power of the gods externally comprehends its participants. As likewise the solar light is present with the air in an unmingled manner, but this is manifest from no light being left in the air, when once that which illuminated it has departed, though heat is still present with it, when that which heated it is entirely withdrawn. Thus also the light of the gods illuminates separately, and being firmly established in itself, wholly proceeds through all beings. Moreover, the light which is the object of sensible perception is one, continuous, and everywhere the same, whole, so that it is not possible for any part of it to be separate and cut off from the whole, nor to be enclosed in a circle, nor at any time to depart from its illuminating source. After the same manner, therefore, the whole world, being partible, is divided about the one and impartible light of the gods. But this light is everywhere one and the same whole, and is impartibly present with all things that are able to participate of it, through an all-perfect power, fills all things, and by a certain causal comprehension encloses and terminates the whole of things in itself, and in everywhere united to itself, and conjoins ends to beginnings. This too, all heaven and the world imitating, revolve with a circular motion, are united to themselves, and lead the elements which are carried round in a circle. Hence the world causes all things to be in each other, and to tend to each other, makes the end of one thing to coalesce with the beginning of another. As, for instance, heaven with earth, or earth with heaven, and produces one connection and concord of wholes with wholes. Will not, therefore, he who surveys this conspicuous statue of the gods, thus unite to itself, be ashamed to have a different opinion of the gods, who are the causes of it, so as to introduce among them sections and separations and corporal form circumscriptions? I indeed should think that every one would be thus disposed. For if there is no ratio, no habitude of symmetry, no communion of essence, nor a connection either in capacity or in energy between that which is adorned and the adorning cause, if this be the case, there will neither be found in the world a certain extension according to interval, nor local comprehension, nor partible interception, nor any other such like connascent equalization in the presence of the gods with mundane natures. For in things which are of a kindred nature, according to essence and power, or which are in a certain respect of the same species, or homogeneous, a certain comprehension or conservation may be discovered. But in such things as are entirely exempt from all mundane wholes, what opposing circumstances are transition through all things, are or partible circumscription, or local comprehension, or anything else of this kind can be justly perceived. I think, therefore, that the several participants of the divinities are of such a nature that some partake of them ethereally, others aerially, and others aquatically, which also the art of divine works perceiving employs adaptations and invocations conformable to such a division, and thus much concerning the contribution, and thus much concerning the distribution of the more excellent genera into the world. The inevitable is imminent. Anno V5, Sol 29 degrees Cancer, Luna 4 degrees Aries. Dies Lunae, July 22nd, 2019, Era Voga, 10:57 a.m. The Conference of the Birds by Farid ad-Din Akhtar al-Persian. Dear Hupu, welcome. You will be our guide. It was on you King Solomon relied to carry secret messages between his court and distant Sheba's lovely queen. He knew your language and you knew his heart. As his close confidant, you learnt the art of holding demons captive underground. And for these valiant exploits you were crowned. And you are welcome, Finch. Rise up and play those liquid notes that steal men's hearts away. Like Moses, you have seen the flames burn high on Sinai's slopes, and there you long to fly. Like him avoid cruel Pharaoh's hand and seek your promised home on Sinai's mountain peak. There you will understand unspoken words, too subtle for the ears of mortal birds, and welcome parrot perched in paradise. Your splendid plumage bears a strange device, a necklace of bright fire about the throat, though heaven's bliss is promised by your coat. This circle stands for hell. If you can flee, like Abraham from Nimrod's enmity, despise these flames, uninjured you will tread through fire if first you cut off Nimrod's head. And when the fear of him has died, put on your gorgeous coat, your collar's strength has gone. Welcome, dear partridge, how you strut with pride along the slopes of wisdom's morning side. Let laughter ring out where your feet have trod, then strike with all your strength the door of God. Destroy the mountain of the self, and here from ruined rocks a camel will appear. Beside its newborn noble hooves a stream of honey mingled with white milk will gleam. Drive on this beast at your journey's end. Saleh will greet you as a long-lost friend. Rare falcon, welcome. How long will you be so fiercely jealous of your liberty? Your lure is love. And when the just is tired, submit and be forever satisfied. Give up the intellect for love and see in one brief moment all eternity. Break nature's frame, be resolute and brave, then rest at peace in unity's black cave. Rejoice in that close, undisturbed, dark air. The prophet will be your companion there. And welcome, Franklin, since once you heard and answered God's first all-commanding word. Since love has spoken in your soul, reject the self, that whirlpool where our lives are wrecked. As Jesus rode his donkey, ride on it. Your stubborn self must bear you and submit. Then burn this self and purify your soul. Let Jesus' spotless spirit be your goal. Destroy this burden, and before your eyes the Holy Ghost in glory will arise. Welcome, dear nightingale, from your sweet throat Pour out the pain of lovers note by note, like David in love's garden gently sighed. There sing the songs that men make long to die. Oh, sing as David did, and with your song guide home man's suffering and deluded throng. The self is like a mail coat, melt the steel to pliant wax with David's holy seal. And when its metal melts like David, you will melt with love and bid the self adieu, and welcome peacock, wants of paradise, who let the venomous smooth snake entice your instincts to its master's evil way, and suffered exile for that fateful day. He blackened your untutored heart and made a tangled darkness of the orchard's shade. Until you crush the snake, how can you be a pilgrim worthy of our mystery? Destroy its ugly charm, and Adam then will welcome you to paradise again. Cock pheasant, welcome. With your piercing sight, look up and see the heart's source drowned in light. You are imprisoned in your filthy well, a dark and noisome, unremitting hell. Rise from this well as Joseph did, and again, the throne of Egypt's fabulous domain, where you and Joseph will together reign. Dear pigeon, welcome. With what joy you yearn to fly away, how sadly you return. Your heart is wrung with grief, you share the gall that Jonah knew, the belly of a whale. The self has swallowed you for its delight. How long will you endure its mindless spite? Cut off its head, seek out the moon, and fly beyond the utmost limits of the sky. Escape this monster and become the friend of Jonah in that ocean without end. Welcome, sweet turtle dove, and softly coo, until the heavens scatter jewels on you. But what ingratitude you show! Around your neck a ring of loyalty is bound. But while you live, you blithely acquiesce from head to claw in smug ungratefulness. Abandon much self-love, and you will see the way that leads us to reality. Their knowledge is your guide, and Khaled will bring clear water drawn from life's eternal spring. And welcome, hawk. Your flight is high and proud, but you return with head politely bowed. In blood and in affliction you must drown, and I suggest you keep your head bent down. What are you here, mere carrion, rotten flesh, withheld from truth by this world's clumsy mesh? Outsoar both this world and the next, and there release from both, take off the hood you wear. When you have turned from both worlds, you will land on Dhul-Qarnayn's outstretched and welcome hand. And little goldfinch, welcome. May your fire be an eternal sign of fierce desire. Whatever happens, burn in those bright flames, and shut your eyes and soul to earthly claims. Then as you burn, whatever pain you feel, remember God will recompense your zeal. When you perceive his hidden secrets, give your life to God's affairs and truly live. At last you made perfect your reality. You will be gone, and only God will be. The birds assemble, and the hoopoe tells them of the sea morgue. The world's birds gathered for their conference, and said our constitution makes no sense. All nations in the world require a king. How is it we alone have no such thing? Only a kingdom can be justly run. We need a king and must inquire for one. They argued how to set about their quest. The hoopoe fluttered forward on his breast. There shone the symbol of the Spirit's way, and on his head truth's crown a feather spray. Discerning, righteous, and intelligent, he spoke, my purposes are heaven sent. I keep God's secrets, mundane and divine, in proof of which behind the holy sign 7, 8, 6 equals 16 and 21. Bismillah etched forever on my beak. No one can share the grief with which I seek. Our longed for Lord and quickened by my haste. My wits find water in the trackless waste. I come as Solomon's close friend and claim the matchless wisdom of that mighty name. He never asked for those who quit his court, but when I left him once alone, he sought. With anxious vigilance for my return, measure my worth by this great king's concern. I bore his letters. Back again I flew. Whatever secrets he divined, I knew. A prophet loved me. God has trusted me. What other bird has won such dignity? For years I traveled over many lands, past oceans, mountains, valleys, deserts, sands, and when the deluge rose, I flew around the world itself and never glimpsed dry ground. With Solomon I set out to explore the limits of the earth from shore to shore. I know our King, but how can I alone endure the journey to his distant throne? Join me, and when at last we end our quest, our King will greet you as his honored guest. How long will you persist in blasphemy? Escape your selfhood's vicious tyranny. Whoever can evade the self transcends this world, and as a lover he ascends. Set free your soul, impatient of delay. Step out along our sovereign's royal way. We have a king beyond Kahab's mountain peak. The sea morgue lives, the sovereign whom you seek, and he is always near to us, though we live far from his transcendent majesty. 100,000 veils of dark and light withdraw his presence from our mortal sight, and in both worlds no being shares the throne that marks the sea morgue's power, and his alone. He reigns in undisturbed omnipotence, bathed in the light of his magnificence. No mind, no intellect can penetrate the mystery of his unending sate. How many countless 100,000s pray for patience and true knowledge of the way that leads to him whom reason cannot claim, nor mortal purity describe or name. Their soul and mind bewildered miss the mark, and faced by him like dazzled eyes are dark. No sage could understand his perfect grace, nor seer discern the beauty of his face. His creatures strive to find a path to him, deluded by each new deceitful whim, But fancy cannot work as she would wish. You cannot weigh the moon like so much fish. How many search for him whose heads are sent, like polo balls in great tournaments. From side to giddy side, how many cries, how many countless groans assail the skies. Do not imagine that the way is short. Vast seas and deserts lie before his court. Consider carefully before you start. The journey asks of you a lion's heart. The road is long. The sea is deep. One flies, first buffeted by joy and then by sighs. If you desire this quest, give up your soul and make our sovereign's court your only goal. First wash your hands of life if you would say, I am a pilgrim of our sovereign's way. Renounce your soul for love. He you pursue will sacrifice his inmost soul for you. It was in China, late one moonless night, the sea morgue first appeared to mortal sight. He let a feather float down through the air, and rumors of its fame spread everywhere. Through the world men separately conceived an image of its shape, and all believed their private fantasies uniquely true. In China still this feather is on view, whence comes the saying you have heard no doubt, seek knowledge unto China, seek it out. If this same feather had not floated down, the world would not be filled with his renown. And it is a sign of him, and in each heart there lies this feather's hidden counterpart. But since no words suffice, what use are mine? To represent or to describe this sign? Whoever wishes to explore the way, let him set out. What more is there to say?